FPV. A little over 2 years ago, I got serious about learning to fly FPV. To be honest, I really struggled with learning to fly FPV coming from the videography drones world. I was mainly flying, larger Phantom type quads in GPS mode. And you always used your phone as something that you'd use to frame shots. But other than that, you were really flying line of sight. And then also you had what's, this really GPS hold. So you could literally take your hands off the sticks and the thing would auto level and stay at altitude. Since videography drones are more like flying cameras with gimbals, the skill set is more centered around getting smooth cinematic shots, understanding various techniques like dolly shots and reveal shots, and photography composition. That's not saying it does not require skills to fly one, it's just a different set of skills. At the time, the simulators weren't that great. I tried that, and that didn't really work for me. And so I did some research and, ran into NewBeeDrone and the AcroBee because I was looking for something that was, gave you the FPV experience, super lightweight, something I didn't have to worry about hitting obstacles with, and being very robust, and because I knew I was going to just crash a lot. And since I was struggling so much with putting on goggles, it was very disorienting for me. So I actually did buy a 5-inch drone. I tried to fly it, and that just didn't work out for me. I could fly it line of sight in angle mode quite well. And it was just making the transition to putting on goggles that at the time was very disorienting for me. So this is what got me to where I could actually do FPV, and that's this AcroBee, NewBeeDrone AcroBee. This thing, I crashed it all the time. It ended up in dog dish bowls, and this thing just held up quite well. So, I am definitely biased because this is what I learned how to fly acro and FPV was with this little NewBeeDrone. This is a brushed one, obviously. So, my experience with NewBeeDrone has been very positive. Their customer service is really good when I've dealt with them. Decided to buy the brushless AcroBee. I actually, started out thinking, well, that's a little high priced. And so I went ahead before that and, purchased the Mobula 6 because, that's super popular. But you can see my review of this. I actually had a lot of problems with this as far as reliability. So I decided to go ahead and purchase this. And I've had it for several months now. So let's go ahead and talk about, the pros and cons of this and why I think it's the best beginner to intermediate brushless whoop out there. And so before I do that, let's go ahead and go through the specs. Of course, it's an F4 flight controller. It weighs approximately, about 23.5 grams, 24 grams. It does have the 0802 18,000 kV motors on it. The thing that's I think that's a differentiator in this, it has 12 amp ESCs, and we'll get into that a little later why I think that's really critical. And it's also 2S capable. It does support, of course, everybody supports turtle mode anymore. It does have a voltage and current sensor. Of course, it has a VTX that is power switchable between 25 milliwatts and 100 milliwatts, and it does support OSD. So another thing that's kind of a differentiator, it does have a diversity as far as a receiver. You can see the two antennas here. But next, what I want to do is compare it to two other very popular whoops out there. Of course, one is probably the most popular, which is the Mobula 6, and the other one is the Meteor 65 Beta FPV. I have a different canopy. This is a TPU printed canopy. So let's talk about flight performance, like racing. I would say if I was to rank them, it would be the Mobula 6 first, followed by the Meteor 65, followed by the AcroBee Brushless. If I was to talk about freestyle flying, I would still say the Mobula 6 is the best, followed by the Meteor 65, and then last place would be still good. And I'll show you a video right here where I'm doing power loops. I have no problem doing those. So it definitely can do whoop style, freestyle. So it's not like it can't. But if I was to rank them, this is how I would rank them. For value, if you don't factor in replacement costs of the motors and frames and flight controllers, the order would be, again, it would be the Mobula 6, followed by the Meteor 65, and then the AcroBee, because this is coming in at $149. This one's coming in at $109 US, and this one about $84. So as far as value, you would say that, hey, this is the order. For flight time, I would say Mobula 6, then I would say the AcroBee, and then in that case, the last place would be the Meteor. It's a little more power hungry. Now this is, I'm talking about no mods here, with not the 48 kilohertz ESC mod on here, so no modifications. This is just stock. So for camera, I would rank it, again, the Mobula 65 being the best, followed by the AcroBee, and then the Meteor 65. For community support, in other words, you know, I would have to say it's probably the Mobula 6, and the reason why, you can get the Project Mockingbird tune on there, with Emu Flight on there, and there's just because it's so popular, there's a lot of community support in this one. And then I would say the Meteor 65 and the AcroBee, I mean, you know, there's support for both of these in the community, so it may be equivalent. I think where the AcroBee wins out, it's probably, for a beginner, the easiest to fly out of the three. So that is one flight characteristics where I think it's number one. And then I would say probably these two are pretty equivalent. You have to have pretty good throttle control on both the Meteor 65 and the Mobula 6. So I would give this the first place when it comes to just ease of flying and stability in flight with the stock tune. So you might say, Slog, why aren't you saying that the Mobula 6 is the clear winner, followed probably by the Meteor 65? And my response would be, well, for me, it's absolutely, these two aren't better. And the reason is, and one of the most important attributes for me for a whoop is durability. I have had all three of these now for several months, and which is the one with the grass stains? It's the AcroBee. It's the one with the most stains because I fly it the most. On the Mobula 6, I had an ESC failure on one. I have two of these right out of the box. I flew it for a day and it dropped an ESC, and I didn't turtle mode it or anything. It just failed. And then on the Meteor 65, I mean, I've had it for quite a while too, but I ended up getting a weak ESC, and I tried reflashing it. Didn't help, to where not every time the motors will spin up. So I'll have to reset and unplug the battery and plug it back in. I finally ended up replacing the all-in-one flight controller on this one. So if you look at it, I've had to replace, you know, a flight controller on this one, and on this one, the Meteor 65. The AcroBee, which I have flown the most, and I have not had any issues with this one whatsoever. So if you were to ask me which one I fly the most, it's absolutely the NewBeeDrone AcroBee Brushed. I've landed it on my roof. I've crashed it numerous times so hard that I ejected the battery out of it. And if you look at it, the frame is in perfect shape. These actually are the original props. And like I say, this thing for a beginner or an intermediate pilot, I would absolutely go with this one just due to durability. And I think there's a good reason why. I mean, if you look, for example, at the frame on the Mobula 6, I mean, it definitely is the weak point. They made it so flimsy and light, you crash this a few times, and you can literally see how this rear left air duct here is actually bent down from me crashing it. You can kind of see it if you look at it aligned. And, you know, I know they're trying to keep the weight down, but this thing, you know, I have a new frame that I need to put on it. I would say if I was to rank as far as frame construction, I would say the Mobula is the worst. And then next would be I think the Meteor 65 has a pretty good frame. It's pretty durable. But the most durable, again, is the AcroBee. This thing is just bulletproof. And then as far as the canopy, this canopy is really super tough. And then this one is really lightweight. It's not super great. The only advantage on the Mobula is, you know, you can adjust the angle of the camera. So if I was to rank them, I'd say number 1, number 2, and then for frame and canopy durability, this would be the last place. They do have a new canopy for these now. It's a harder, it's not the real thin, brittle plastic on the ones that you order now. So, why do I think that these keep blowing the ESCs when you're trying to do turtle mode or getting them caught in grass and then not, you know, throttling down or disarming it? I think it's because this thing has a 12 amp ESC. It is 2S capable, so even though you wouldn't fly 2S with these motors, 12 amps as compared to the Meteor 65 and the Mobula, they're around 5 amps each. So I think that makes a big difference. I think they're all good, personally, but I always have to go with what do I fly, or which quad do I actually grab when I want to sit back and not have to worry about using turtle mode, or just want to sit in my chair in my living room and tool around. I reach for this one. I don't reach for this one or this one. This one flies. It's a lot easier to fly inside my house. The throttle, it's a little more linear in its response. These, you know, they're fast. I mean, these these are really, I think, more for whoop racing, this one and the Meteor. Whereas this one is good for a beginner, an intermediate pilot, or somebody like me that just wants to tool around in their house or go outside. And maybe when it's really calm weather, do a couple of loops and rolls and power loops, that kind of thing. But, you know, not real serious whoop acro either. So, again, for me, this is the winner. And these two are pretty equivalent. And again, they're all three of them are good, but definitely this is the one that I would pick. So with that, thanks for watching my channel.